Hi everyone. Thank you very much for coming to join us for this discussion. My name is Christine, as you've just heard. I'm a music journalist and editor and copywriter and strategist within the marketing sphere, within the music industry. I've worked in music for almost 15 years now, and I'd love to bring out the rest of the panelists from behind the stage to join me. So I think it's a good place to start if each of you could introduce yourselves, a little bit of context as to how you're involved in the music industry, and in particular the electronic music industry, and then we can take it from there.
Who wants to start? You can start. Me? Okay. So, hey everyone, I'm Anita Jóri. I'm a research assistant at the Berlin University of the Arts, and I'm just currently finishing my PhD on electronic dance music and the discourse community of electronic dance music. So it's a linguistic perspective where one can already see the differences in the communicational behavior among female and male participants, because mainly I'm doing research on user-generated content online, and then how we use language actually online and talk about music. So that's mainly my topic. It's not a gender perspective, but that's how I approach it, and maybe I can add some words about that later, and also about this educational part. I don't know, should I say anything else, or it's fine in the beginning? Yeah, it's a good, yeah.
Hello, I'm Thomas Vorreyer. I'm the German editor-in-chief of FUMP. That's the electronic music and club culture channel of Vice. And yeah, I've been a music journalist and editor for a few years by now.
Hi everyone, my name is Désirée Vach. I run a small label called Snow White Records, but I'm also on the VOT, the vice chairwoman of VOT. VOT is the Association of Independent Smaller and Music Companies in Germany, and we have a market share of 40%. And I'm curious to the talk today.
Hi, my name is Camille. I'm a digital consultant and I run my own communication agency. I'm also a freelance writer and a DJ. I DJ under the name Berlin Disaster. And I've been organizing some workshops for women and LGBT people to learn how to DJ. And also organizing several parties with all-female lineups.
Awesome. So I guess the main core purpose of this discussion is to look at actionable solutions to address this gender disparity, and not to focus so much on the disparity itself. But I think before we launch into that conversation, it would be good to start with just some basic statistics so we have an idea of what we're actually talking about. So these are just some basic statistics that I pulled about the music industry, and then some kind of more specific instances within electronic music. So to start with, generally speaking, in terms of workforce, women comprise 30% of the music industry workforce. Women make up 59% of entry-level business roles within the music industry, but only 30% of senior executive roles. And within that split, men are overrepresented in areas of A&R, label heads, etc., whereas women are overrepresented in the fields of PR and marketing, etc. In 2010, this is a UK statistic, 47% of women in music earned under £10,000 a year, compared with 35% of men, and that gap really hasn't changed very much since then. From the UK Performing Rights Society, which is like a kind of collection society that represents writers and producers, only 14% of their members are women. And in the music industry overall, less than 5% of recognised producers identify as being women. So that's overall, but also if we kind of drill down into electronic music, I thought there'd be a few interesting instances to put forth to the panel. In 2016, a popular event and label brand called Dekmantel from Amsterdam, they announced an event called Dekmantel Selectors, and they have a main event called Dekmantel, but this specific boutique event was more about kind of bringing together the creme de la creme of technical and musical DJs, people who really define DJing as an art. And they were heavily criticised because of the almost 80 artists that they booked, only 7 were female. Also in 2016, DJ Mag, which is a very popular, kind of more mainstream electronic music publication, they put out their 25th anniversary edition, which had 25 pioneers of electronic music on the cover, and none of them were women. Also, from DJ Mag, they publish a very highly publicised top 100 poll each year, and they've had instances over the last, let's say 15 years, where there have been no women represented at all, and those positions are voted by the public. Looking at Resident Advisor as well. Their top 100 DJ poll, which is publicly voted, featured 7 women last year, and their top 50 live acts poll featured no women. One other interesting thing that's happened in the last few months is there is a British DJ by the name of Jack Master who has quite a big following, and he posted a series of really widely shared tweets about his personal observations with regards to sexism within the music industry, but I thought his wording was really interesting, and I'm just quoting him here. "Tonight was the first time that the plight and or prejudice surrounding females in the music industry truly hit home and resonated with me." I just thought that was an interesting way of framing his perspective. And the last statistic is there was a Nielsen poll in 2014, and of all electronic music listeners, 45% are female and 55% are male. So I just wanted to put all of those statistics out to all of you and also to the panel so we can start addressing this idea of how to reflect that kind of split when it comes to listenership, how it can be better reflected within the music industry for the creators and also for the people who work in the business. So I'd love to just open it up with putting to all of you, like, what is your idea of equality within this electronic music scene? Is it just about a 50-50 split? Is it about kind of a numbers, parity with numbers, or is it something that goes a little bit deeper than that? I'd love to know.
Well, obviously it starts with equality in terms of representation. So I think that today there should not be an event that doesn't feature female artists, to start on the artistic side of it. But then it also needs to mean that there are enough women working within the music industry, and as you mentioned before, also in leading positions, and not only as interns or PR and like marketing positions.
Yeah, I think in Berlin we are quite spoiled with these numbers, and we are with those ratas, because we have here in Berlin female pressure and all those networks and thousands of other things, female GEDEC and so on. So there are a lot of different network systems, and I think Berlin is quite good at those ratas, and we are getting to this 50-50% or maybe even higher, but the rest of the world is just terrible to hear those numbers that are like this. So yeah, I still have the hope that it will get to this point, but yeah, maybe later on we can talk about this female rata and all those things too, that what can also help about that. I don't know.
Yeah, we just add that, like, in the diverse, like to make the scene more diverse, and even like in Berlin, you have many clubs, for instance, who run like nights where it's only like one white male DJ after another, and you have like 8 of them booked, where like people like me, editors and bookers and promoters, are like held accountable for what they're actually like putting out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Anita is right. In Berlin, there's a lot of happening there. You've got networks, and I think it's really important that DJs who are already in the scene support the new DJs. So, and I think this is it's good happening that the networks are happening, but it's all about creating awareness. And so I think the people who are booking events have to book female DJs. More often.
And I guess my question to something like that is how do you see it being enforced, or how do you see people being held accountable for not kind of complying? Because it's not, obviously it's not a rule, it's something that people are aware of, but I feel like from the perspective of a club owner, or it's really easy to fall back on this excuse of like, well, I don't want to book somebody because they don't deserve it, or I want to book this person because they've been booked before and they're going to bring people in. I mean, I don't know, do any of you have any ideas about how to overcome those types of clapbacks which are in some way validated? But yeah, how to kind of get people over that hurdle of not enforcing things that they might want to support, but making kind of commercial decisions, if you know what I mean.
I would say it's a lot about raising awareness. Something I do, for example, very often is just like sharing ideal lineups that I would do. Like I do it on Twitter very often, of only female acts who have a very large following, which might like show to some people that they are actually very successful female artists that they could book, that would bring people. And it's also about not like being uncompromising when booking events. I would say like I'm launching a new female-focused party actually next week that is focusing on tropical music, and I have a lot of male contacts that are already asking me to play the next ones. But even if I love them very much, I've just decided that I will keep booking only women, because that's these kind of events that might like make numbers a little bit better.
Yeah, and another kind of thing what could help is the female quota. There's a lot of discussions nowadays going on because of that, and I'm also a little bit of critical about that because I'm hearing it continuously from my friends who are female DJs and producers who say that, you know, I don't want to be the part of the female quota. I don't want to be the 30% because I'm just invited to a club or to a place because I'm a female and I have to be. But that it can be also a temporary solution still, though, that we push it somehow above, and then we reach those numbers, and after a while, maybe in 10 years or 15 years, it's going to be completely normal that 50% of the lineup is female or male. So that can be one of that. Maybe you have some words to that. Or...
Yeah, and I think, Thomas, like when we spoke last week, I think you had some really interesting strategies that you already have in place in terms of including diverse voices when it comes to creating content, because it definitely does have an impact, I think, if it's just white dudes, you know.
Yeah, people like me. And the situation is that the core team I work with is like guys like me in that sense, and that kind of leads to me thinking like I think we need to have a diverse coverage, because a diverse coverage is more engaging, and I think like is a better solution at all, and a more just one. And that's why I'm like you mentioned female pressure earlier, you know, doing the numbers of like festival lineups, who's playing where, and like I did the same, or like I regularly do the same thing for my own work, looking like who me and my team cover, looking into who I'm sending out to do photography, to do the writing, and trying to balance that. And also holding the festivals accountable, or like the nights. So there's sometimes nights with male-only booking, for instance, or even like, and we think, okay, so like there's some really great DJs in there, which we would love to support. So we like write something about the event or the festival, but at the same time we mentioned that, hey, that's a good booking here, but it's not a diverse booking. That's like a sad thing about it. And that often leads to people saying, well, yeah, actually we thought about this in the beginning, but we didn't enforce it once we were like programming it. And I think that's like at least tiny part you can do on like not only just having this as a topic, but also like as a really like problematization, which then leads to action.
I also think I always look at everything from the music industry perspective, and I think it's that you also have to have role models. So if you're a young woman and you go to a club and then you see somebody DJing there, a female DJ, so this helps you to get yourself together and try to be a DJ too. So, so at the VOT, the Association of Independent Companies, we had this a mentor program. So, but this is really industry focused. So where women, experienced women in the industry meet mentees, like young people, young women who are just entering the business, and they got matched. And over 6 months, they had like one-to-one meetings and like monthly meetings with all of them. And I think it's about like, I know this is a word, it's always going together with feminism, like empowering, but I think it is, we have to empower each other, to break all the structures which hold the young women back at the moment.
I think it's also closely connected to the education generally, that there's like also statistics existing about that women are more comfortable with female lecturers. And this is exactly the same thing what you mentioned, that if there are some music production courses, DJing courses and so on, what you also do, maybe you can also say some words about that, from female artists or from female DJs, I think it's very important to have then also women can ask questions in an intimate atmosphere, that they don't feel shy or they don't feel, I don't know, pressed down by, I don't know, male. And I'm not generalizing here that all male are doing the same thing, but still that it's another, I don't know, atmosphere for the whole lecturing thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you're talking about kind of creating very distinct pathways to allow young women to have access to people with knowledge or people who can provide them with employment, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's definitely a strategy that is logical and I think quite powerful because it does empower. But I'm also interested because I think sometimes with these discussions, a lot of the onus is put on the people who may have already been kind of, how can I put it? A lot of the labour, like the actual labour and the emotional labour, is kind of placed on the shoulders of women to help other women. Do you think that there are any strategies that people can implement widely? For example, I know of a couple of male artists who won't be booked on particular lineups for particular festivals if there aren't a certain proportion of women there. I mean, did any of you have any other ideas about how people who aren't women or who aren't marginalised folks can support in a way that's impactful?
Yeah, exactly. I think you mentioned it last week when we were coming here, that there are a lot of DJs or male DJs who don't go to festivals or where it's at least, I don't know, 30% of the lineup is female or female DJs or producers. So I think it's kind of on this micro level, it works like this, really in the lowest level, that you as a person, as an activist, you do something against this whole terrible numbers. Mm-hmm. And this can be also one of them. So I know a lot of people who do that, or like male DJs and producers, but maybe there are other examples, I don't know.
Well, I think it's like also up to like people in like this gateway positions to kind of like stand up to each other and like use like this backdoor chat or like the backstage chat to like make like each other accountable, as I already said. And like I think people should like commit. And it's like sometimes you can do that through like creating a campaign online and writing articles, but this has already been done, and I think the topic is out there and people are aware of it. But what they, like many are not aware of it, that like why they write about it or like represent this idea that they don't really like apply it as strictly to themselves. And when you spot something like that, you have like a connection to someone, like a professional one, or however, you should like talk to them about it, you know, and you shouldn't just like wait for a female or who else artist to, you know, stand up and, you know, make people aware of that.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. It's also about sharing good experiences. So if you heard something about like that a woman is featured, it's about like talking about it because it's an ongoing topic. So,
just to kind of cycle back to our introduction, there is a lot of talk and buzz around this phrase techno-feminism, which is something that I'm personally, I can't quite figure out how I feel about it, because I do believe it is a conversation that's gaining critical mass, which is really important, but at the same time it seems to be kind of co-opted either by individuals or by commercial entities or by event promoters to be this kind of byproduct or kind of marketing niche by which to sell their artists or to sell their events or to sell their products. I'm just curious, is this something that you are all aware of, like individually, and do you have any feelings about how sometimes these strategies or these conversations might not have the purest intent, I suppose?
I have to say it's the first time that I've heard about techno-feminism. So yeah, and I didn't know that there's like this that it's used as a marketing tool, which is really bad in a way because first off, feminism is sometimes. Some people unfortunately have this negative connection to this word, and then I don't know what. I think it shouldn't be used as a tool.
I mean, I think the phrase became popular. It's the name of a party put on by a collective called Discwoman in New York, and it's just, I guess, it's just a phrase that kind of tapped into the zeitgeist and that was easy to hashtag, and it's just kind of like taken on a bit of a life of its own. But yeah, I just was curious to know if you were aware of this term.
Yeah, this right now Smirnoff is doing a lot of like actions to promote female producers and female DJs, and to me, like it might be a marketing tool, but in the end, it does have like a real impact, which is cannot really be like undermined. They had an event this week last week in London where female producers were invited to like talk about music production, learn about it, play their tracks on the Fabric sound system. A lot of my contacts were going, and I think it's still like providing a platform and many opportunities for women, because if it's a large international brand that does something like this, it still shows that it's an issue that needs to be dealt with. And it's, even if it's for marketing purposes, in the end the result is the same. People are still going to be hearing more about the issues about sexism in the music industry, and people are going to see actual options to try to put an end to it.
Anybody else? No? And I wanted to kind of ask specifically about the spaces in which electronic music is consumed, like primarily clubs or festivals, that kind of thing. For example, a friend of mine who runs a party here in Berlin called Room for Resistance, they have a designated person who they kind of have a bit of a meet-up before the actual event with kind of friends and family and say, this is the designated person. If you're being harassed or if someone's making you feel uncomfortable, just go to them, because the promoters themselves are kind of running around and generally don't have the time or the resources to be able to manage that situation. So they've implemented this kind of one designated person to kind of allow people to feel more at home. Is this something that you guys think is necessary? Because I feel like in the club space and in the event space, there is this idea that electronic music is this like utopia where people come together and we're all as one, but the same issues that affect society outside of the club affect it inside the club. So I don't know, how do you feel about situations where behaviour and how people are kind of interacting with each other, and particularly interacting with women? Is it something that you think is necessary? Do you think it's too much? Like, what's your feeling about it?
I would say it's necessary, because in order for people to want to join the music industry, be it as an artist or as someone that works for music-related businesses, if they don't feel safe in the first space they're going to see that is music-related, which is a club, how are they going to want to join the industry afterwards? So.
Yeah.
I would like to add that the same applies to online. Like when you're a promoter or like an editor in this case, you also like think you have to commit to the idea that you kind of have to be this like person in the comment section yourself. You know, you have to at least look at it, see what's going on there, because often you will find like male harassment in there. For instance, when you write about certain DJs, and then you like either like have to interact there or like support the voices who are already standing up there. And it's like also like you shouldn't like leave your event or your content you're putting out just on its own and think, well, I'm done, let's go home. You know, you should like, yeah, stick to it.
I'd like to kind of direct a question towards you, Thomas, specifically about online spaces and online content, because I feel like as there's more and more awareness about discrimination and people becoming marginalised, that a lot of these conversations are being taken online, and there seems to be this cycle of somebody does or says something inappropriate, there is this huge kind of flare of negative attention towards them. Either they'll delete their profile or they'll kind of put out a half-thought apology, things like that. I mean, I don't know, I'd just be interested to know your take as somebody who's kind of managing like an online platform. This kind of culture of calling out people, do you think it's effective when it comes to issues like this, which is so deeply ingrained in society? Like, what's your take on it? Actually, it's for all of the panelists, but yeah, I'd like to hear from you specifically.
Yeah, we just actually did that with Johannes Heil, who's a quite well-connected and well-established techno DJ from the Frankfurt scene, and used sexist language to like describe the right and the wrong techno in his eyes. And since nobody was like interacting there or like was calling him out for it, and no other outlet did it, we did it in the end. And then it kind of like sparked a discussion. He didn't delete his profile, but at the same time, like I don't really think like he did get the point. These things are more like processes, I would say. I guess well, it would be interesting to hear the other participants' experience in that. I mean, it definitely like often creates a case where like which makes like certain things visible, and it feels a bit like you have to like make every mistake visible at least once so that everybody understands, and then like 5 years later the same circle repeats again, maybe. But yeah, maybe it's not the best solution at all.
Those forums which I was analyzing, they don't have those administrators or those who stop them, so they are there. They are accessible online, and there are sexist comments still online, and everybody can read them until today. And I try to, I don't want to name those forums, but I try to write them to that, hey guys, I know that 98% of the forum users are male, but these comments are just not okay. Never got back an answer. So I have exactly the opposite. So when it's like online and yeah, everybody can still read them. So I have a bad experience on that.
I still think that like it's the same as having quotas is not an ideal solution, but calling out people is also, yeah, it's not ideal, but it's still a way to make things change a little bit quicker than they would without. What I find, for example, like I find it super important and interesting that a lot of people that are in positions of power use their voice to actually call out sexist things. One person who does it a lot is Michael Stangl from Boiler Room. He's constantly calling out people on social media, but he's a person that is so influential that I think that without him, being a straight man and actually taking position for women all the time, is something that might help as other straight men will identify with him and think, okay, if he finds it inappropriate, then probably I should think the same.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. He is really consistent about kind of taking no bullshit when it comes to those kinds of things. But I'd also like to kind of maybe ask all of your thoughts about what women, or people who aren't even women actually, can do in these instances, because I feel like with these conversations we're talking about macro problems and micro instances, either something that's kind of like a larger conversation, or when it comes down to one-to-one interactions. And I think that as a woman who has worked in the music industry for a lot of years, there have certainly been instances where in conversation, or when I'm kind of not prepared, or when I'm on my own, something will be said to me, and not always having the foresight, that classic situation of thinking of the comeback an hour later. But I feel like now that this is an issue that's been so heavily identified within the music industry and within the electronic music industry, what would be your advice for particularly young people who are in the industry or wanting to get into the industry, who are dealing with these roadblocks? What should they say? What should they do? How should they contend with it?
I think it's not the easiest way, but of course saying something and not just taking it in is super important. If you are someone who is new to the industry, who is young and who doesn't feel like you have the confidence to say something, sorry, I think it's really important that you speak about it maybe to someone else that might stand up for you. And it doesn't have to be right in the minute, it might be a week after, but just messaging someone and telling them about what happened, if it's someone that they have a link to, could help. I mean, definitely seeking support from someone more confident or powerful is definitely an option.
Or any kind of networks. For example, I don't know if you do that also at the mentoring program. It's the part of it.
Yeah, I think this is if you're new to a company and you're afraid of probably doing everything right and you don't want to lose your job. I think it's the smartest way to find a mentor, a female a woman who's working in the company, and which you can ask because sometimes it's not easy. Now I'm doing this for a long time now, but I do remember that when you are starting a job and everything is new to you and you want to do everything right, just find somebody you can trust. It doesn't have to be a woman in the end. If you find somebody, if you find somebody who can help you, that's brilliant. I remember when I was working for a label called Kitty-O 15 years ago, and I did this is a funny story, but in the end it's not funny. So I had to go to this distribution convention, and distribution is mainly by there are a lot of men in there, middle-aged white men, and so I was entering the room, and I said, "Yeah, hi, my name is Daisy," and they said, "Oh yeah, nice. We have. Can I get a coffee from you?" So, and I was like, "What? I'm here to present the new releases," and I was shocked. Now I can laugh about it. But at that time, I would have wished that I have the confidence to say, no, I'm not bringing you the coffee, I'm here to present the releases. And sometimes it's just about jumping over your shadow and just to say, no, I'm here for this. I'm here because this is my job. This is what this is my work, and I'm not here because I look like you have these old-fashioned structures where you think I'm bringing the coffee to you. So. Do you want this one?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of networks also that are made for women in a way in the music industry. We mentioned female pressure before, for example, in Mint. There's also another group, Facebook group that is called Sister, and this I've seen it repeatedly being used by young DJs or producers who are saying, so I've been put in this situation, it sucks, I don't know what to do, or like this promoter refuses to pay me, what can I do? And the group has like almost 1,000 members, and the thing is like whatever bad situation you're going to find yourself in, there's a really high chance that someone else has experienced it before, and that you can receive actionable solutions from your peers, pretty much. So I think it's really important to rely on networks and try to join them to find help.
Yeah, absolutely. And other networks like She Said So, which is another awesome online platform, which has a kind of stream about letting women know about jobs that are going in the music industry. I think they're a really fantastic resource for any women who are looking to continue being employed or to enter the music industry. But I wanted to ask specifically Anita, because I think when we're discussing this issue, of course, we're coming at it from the end point where these disparities are occurring and you know, women are feeling like discouraged and insulted, etc., etc. But of course, when it comes to music, these kinds of things are kind of set in stone really early on, even when it comes to the development of acoustic or digital instrumentation, the language used to describe music and to describe instruments. That's some of the work that you've done, right?
Yeah. Actually, everything starts right from the beginning. That's how you said, because society really puts you into these gender roles right from the beginning. When you are in the kindergarten and you are a girl, you have to play with the dolls, you have to play with the Barbies, but the boys can play with the matchboxes, they can build up robots, they can do the gadgets and all those things to play with. But you as a girl, you will be always just the smart, the kind one. Many times there are a lot of exceptions, and there are a lot of news streams and educational streams who try to really stop this whole gender perspectives and all those things, what starts right from the beginning in the kindergarten. But that's how starts this whole kind of relationship with technology generally, for you to also for the female and male, also for the boys and for the girls. And later on it goes further, of course, because then the boys get more confident with using any kind of technology, computers and some programming, and then it's like also like getting to the two directions right from the beginning, and that's how what we should also change. But it's going to be the long scale change, because what we can do now is like all those things what we just pointed out here, but for like when the 10, 20, 30, 100 years, that's the goal actually, to change it completely, because then also like in the kindergarten, doesn't matter if you are a girl or you are a boy, you can play with those different gadgets, and why not, and so on. So that should be changed, and we hope that
I'm curious to know from any of you actually, have you had any instances, let me backtrack a little bit. I think these kinds of discussions are really super important and valuable, but sometimes I worry that it becomes a bit of an echo chamber, like we're all kind of confirming each other's perspectives, but when it comes to engaging with people who inherently believe that women aren't as smart or as technical or as musical or as good, have you had any instances of having to contend with somebody or to argue with somebody or try to kind of change their perspective on women and their role in music? Have any of you had that kind of instance? I'd love to hear about it.
I don't have that much experience with that, luckily, so I had just the basic, like, not on making music, but more like on a computer basics that, like, you don't know that, you don't know how it works, so just, like, give me that, and then I know how it works, so please give me back, I can do that, I can handle it. It happens, of course, like, every day to you, but one should just, I don't know, handle these kind of situations. But with music making, I don't have experience, so maybe you. Lucky one. The others.
Or even from a DJ perspective, perhaps, of
Yeah, I guess, yeah, but can you repeat the question?
Oh, sure. Sorry, it was a long-winded question, but I was saying that these kind of conversations are really important, but where our opinion on the matter is all pretty well aligned. I think we all hold the same kinds of opinions, but particularly for someone who works as a DJ and doing events, I would imagine that you have to deal with bookers or deal with sound engineers or deal with club owners, that kind of thing, who just don't think that you're able to do your job as well. Like, how has that affected you? How have you contended with that? Have you kind of felt like you were in a place to be able to challenge somebody?
Yeah, well, personally speaking, like all of my bad experiences have been with sound engineers, because as we said, like in Berlin, I primarily play in Berlin, and we're quite spoiled. I mean, I've never in Berlin played a party where I was the only female DJing, for example. And I've always been booked by people who actually organize like female focus or queer events, who really want me to be there in a way. Sound engineers, on the other hand, yeah, have often implied that I didn't know how to use the equipment, especially like on instances where I've had to play with a laptop and not with CDJs, because they just assumed I didn't know how to plug it in. But this is something that can be... At the beginning, I must say I didn't know how to plug in my equipment, but because I was not interested in it. And after a while, I decided to actually learn how to do it, just to make sure no one could tell me anything and that I would be prepared for any situation. But yeah, very often I just show up at the DJ booth and people just ask me what I'm doing there and like joke about the fact that I want to play, and I'm like, well, actually, yeah, I'm on in a minute, like it's my turn to play. So yeah, but I guess like if you have the knowledge, like if you have enough knowledge about what you're doing, which most people actually have, with it comes like more confidence, and then you're able to deal with these situations and just like brush them off a little bit more, or like come up with good comebacks, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've also noticed that when I meet people, music industry people, and they have their own company, they are sometimes not aware that they only have or 90% men in their office. So when I talk to them, they're like, "Why do you only have like men in the office?" They're like, "Oh yeah, shit, I haven't been aware of this fact." So they start to think, but then the other problem occurs that. When you, for example, like in PR companies, like doing PR for release, for labels, for bands, when young women enter the job, they always, or like it's, unfortunately it's still happening, they apply for an assistant job rather than being a junior. So, yeah. So it's about encouraging people who have a company to encourage if young women are applying, not only giving them the assistant job, but support them to have a junior position.
In electronic music, you often experience that successful female DJs are like people say, well, actually, like they are boring DJs and they're just there because they're the person who they are. Or that when there's a young rising female producer, people would say, well, she's not producing her stuff herself. And that even like women can say that about other women too. And like you're there to challenge that. You're also like as an editor there to challenge your own writers and yourself on the language you use. I remember one case where we back then, like another editor where I used to work was writing about female hairdresser rock, because in German like language is heavily gendered, Friseurinnenrock. And then it was like me and another editor who like told him, well, that doesn't make sense. You wouldn't do that with anything else. You wouldn't say like this is a male painter rock or whatever. And at the same time, like when you get asked for recommendations, like put yourself like a stoplight in your head, who am I recommending? Like when you leave a job, who are you recommending? Just like even if you don't like represent it yourself through existence, then like make room for somebody behind you at least. Yeah.
have to add, when it comes to recommendations, I've always noticed. So if they're like men, they're easy to. They support. They support each other, and they recommend a job to one of their buddies. While women are always really careful recommending other women. I don't know why that is, and shouldn't be like this. Because, but I could imagine that women feel responsible if the person she has recommended is not doing the job right. Then she's like, oh my God, I recommended this person and this woman, and she's not doing the job right. But I think women have to become more easy in that. So they have to recommend other DJs or other people in the industry, other women in the industry, and not thinking of what is happening if it doesn't work out in the job they're doing.
Interesting. I wanted to put forward another idea as a strategy, particularly going back to that statistic of women account for 45% of the kind of listenership or purchasing power when it comes to electronic music. And I think sometimes these strategies can also maybe not be as effective because they're not, it's either kind of collectives which are separated geographically, but I kind of am interested in this idea of women having a strategy that's based in economics, like not purchasing music from a record label that only releases male artists, or not buying tickets to an event where there are none or like less than a small % of the artists who are performing are women, etc., etc. Like, what do you guys think about that? Do you think that that could potentially be a strategy to force people's hand to recognise that women are important in terms of being creators, but also just being stakeholders in the scene as a whole?
I think like more than not purchasing tickets to events when there's only men playing, etc., I don't see it as a really sustainable strategy. Because if someone's favorite DJ is coming to town and it happens to be a man, and then they wouldn't go, I don't really see it happening. However, what I think would be more useful in a way is to actually go when there's a woman playing, and go to female-focused parties and to actually spread the word about events where women are playing, and instead of having like a negative way of acting, just like being positive and pushing forward the things that are already going in the right direction. Because if clubs that only book male DJs realize that like there's a party the same night with only women playing and that people are actually more excited about this, they might actually end up changing their behavior.
Anybody else?
What I noticed in the recent month is that how important Spotify plays actually, and especially this streaming service has become. Like many festivals are looking into these numbers first, not even the Facebook numbers, but the Spotify numbers. And so one thing everybody can do is, like put the right songs and tracks in your mixtape, maybe do a private session if you want to listen to your male producer, like maybe not.
Log out or something.
Yeah, just like, shift the numbers from that side, because that's something really like the consumers can do, and I agree, it's better than like negative whatever,
Awesome. That's it. I think we're going to have time for some questions, but before we wrapped up, I just wanted to ask all of the panelists, like, what do you hope for the future? What do you see for the future? Do you feel optimistic about us getting to a point or getting closer and closer towards equality?
I'm pretty optimistic, especially because, now like it's sort of like the good side of a bad thing in a way, but more and more like female-focused events are getting a lot of publicity, a lot of press. A lot of clubs are booking more women, even if they just do it to not get called out or to actually get praise. But I feel just the fact that people don't want to be called out and are trying to keep a low profile means that there might be more equality in the very near future, actually. And I also feel like very optimistic about how much women help each other. I feel like over the past few years, there have, like, women in general have stopped stop letting themselves be victimized and have decided to just create networks and link up with people to actually show that they're more powerful than men and that they can do the same things.
Yeah, it's exciting times at the moment. There's a lot of, there's on all social levels, there's something happening for women. So I think we just be part of the movement, spread the word, and hopefully in, I don't know, 100 years, as you said, they won't believe us, or we are long dead then, but that nobody believes that we at some point had this discussion, because then it's like, then we are living in an ideal world, hopefully.
Just wanted to add some negative words, so that we are not only like very optimistic, but yeah. So we are talking about this typical European and American perspective again here. That here there are a lot of discussions that are going on, especially in Berlin. But what's going on in the rest of the world, first of all we don't know, or I don't know, like we don't talk about that. And there, I can imagine that it won't change in the next 10, 15, 20. I don't know, 50 years. But the hope is also there, but yeah, I really wanted to point out that always this thing that we are always in this European-American perspective, so we should not forget about the rest of the world, so what's going on there, yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, like, I feel like European or American women are still getting more aware of like what happens in the rest of the world. The Black Madonna, for example, worked in this created like this mentoring project in Southeast Asia, I think. I also have a producer friend who's called Mina, who is a white woman from London, but who produces like African-inspired music, like lots of kuduro, for example. But what she does is like she goes to Africa, like to a different country every time. She's been to Ghana, for example, and she goes, tries to bring some equipment, and then also has workshops and tries to like teach young women there how to DJ and try to really like give back, considering that she's taking something from them with the music she plays. But she really makes a really conscious effort to give back to these people. She has black women singing on her tracks, and then which helps like bring them to Europe for dates and really like launch their careers. So there's still a way to like, I'm still hopeful that people are just going to help each other, and also not only like within their circle.
We need definitely more of those projects. That's it.
Okay, I think we're going to open it up to questions. We have a microphone that will come round.
Hello. Thanks for the lovely talk. It was really informative. You said with 45% of listeners or buyers being female, I just had to thought about the vinyl resurgence with female DJs probably playing a lot of vinyls as well. Do you think that is a chance in there for young girls to discover vinyls with like electronic DJs, or do you think it's like such a niche that is like just off track? Thanks.
Well, personally, so you're asking if the resurgence of vinyl will benefit young women? Is that what you mean? I think it's a little bit complicated, because when you're talking about people who are DJing and then people who are DJing with vinyl, I think you're also talking about a certain economic band of people who can afford to buy vinyl. And I think when it comes to disseminating the technology, a lot of it would have to do with digital DJing, particularly for people who aren't living in big cities or are in rural areas or in like quite disadvantaged areas. I think it would be fantastic, but in terms of increasing the access that women have to learning how to DJ or being able to DJ out, I think the digital technology is probably going to be more of a practical way for that to happen. Yeah. Does anybody else?
Yeah, during the workshops I've been organizing, the last one was hosted at Native Instruments, and we could have just decided to only let people like learn with controllers. But I really wanted to help them learn how to DJ with CDJs, because even though very few people have CDJs at home to practice, all it takes to get started is buying 2 USB sticks and headphones. So I think that helps to lower the barrier of entry, as you said, that having vinyl is not as easy as and owning turntables, etc., is really way more complicated than just having like some MP3s on your laptop and 2 USB sticks.
Are there any more questions, comments?
Yeah, thank you as well for the different perspectives on these kinds of solutions that we have. I think you have numbered quite a lot of them. And I see there's a lot of talk about building your own structures, but it's also much about what resonates with a kind of self-accountability. And I guess my question is for Thomas, because you have given such a special report on how you hold yourself and your team responsible or accountable for diverse media production. And being a white male, I would guess that this maybe was not always the case. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you managed to implement or develop this kind of self-accountability for you and your team.
Very briefly, the whole idea came with the female pressure statistics, and I saw them being shared through other publications, not as only the publication I was working on. And that led to especially one very good publication, like producing, like, they didn't coin it female issue, but they did one special issue where they only like featured female producers and female artists in it, and the next issue then like only featured male in it somehow, because there was the leftovers from the month before, I think. And then the issue afterwards, you know, didn't like really, I mean, it's the same with DJ Mag, which you coined out early. They also like have one female issue every year, and then like they do the 25 male faces of the electronic music scene, you know, and the other 100. And I saw that, and I was confused, and then I thought, okay, maybe that's the same with me, you know, maybe with the site I'm running. And then I like pulled the numbers for half a year and put them out online. And yeah, I mean, it turned out that our numbers were slightly better, but not like significantly. And since then, it's like something I always like have in mind and like look through at least once a month, yeah, and then discuss with my people.
When you say you put it online, did you publish it, or?
I did publish it back then, yeah. I don't do it now, but like I can share these numbers if whoever requests them, yeah, yeah.
I think we're actually out of time now. Yeah, we're down to 1 minute. So I'd love to say thank you to our panelists, to Desi, Thomas, Anita and Camille, and also a bit of a shout out to GMM, which is the organisation that allowed us to participate in this talk today. And thanks to all of you for sticking around.
And to Lorenz Grunewald, who just asked us, because he helped us a lot in the organisation.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much also, Lorenz.
And thanks to you for hosting.
Oh,
thanks,